Hello, everybody. Today I'm going to talk about a new kind of instability which is actually driven by surface tension. The work forms a part of Rashmi Ramadugu's PhD, and her main advisor is Prasad Perlekar, who's a co author on this work. I'll be alluding to some older work done with Harish Dikshit. So, what happens in turbulence of multiphase flows? This is the question that we're trying to ask here. Now, in multiphase flows, like normally people are, people follow two dogmas. One is that if you have the Navier-Stokes equation for two fluids, so imagine that now you have two fluids, one of them of density rho naught and the other one of density rho naught plus delta rho naught with the density difference of delta rho, and there is a surface tension force between those two fluids. So when this is the case, this is the Navier-Stokes equation written in full. Now, what people do is they look at this thing called Atwood number, which is the density difference divided by the total density. And they say that if Atwood number is very, very small, then we can throw away the density differences except preserve it in the gravity term. So we showed some, and this is called the Boussinesq approximation. We showed some time ago that you can't do this in this term in the neighborhood of a vortex. So if you have a vortex of circulation gamma, you can't do it if this quantity is, order 1 or greater. In other words, if there's a powerful vortex compared to gravity, if it's equally powerful or more powerful, you cannot do this Boussinesq approximation. The other dogma is that surface tension stabilizes. I mean, this is the first thing you learn about surface tension whenever you study it. So, like what people say is that, if you have a long wavelength perturbation, then surface tension will do nothing. But if you have a short wavelength perturbation, then surface tension doesn't like the increase in the interface length. So, it's going to act to smooth it out. So, all these perturbations are going to decay. But even from very, very long time ago, like more than a century ago, we know about the Rayleigh plateau instability. We know that this argument of increased length doesn't hold in three dimensions. So, in three dimensions, like you may not be too surprised if you see an instability driven by surface tension. However, in two dimensions, you can't think of such a scenario, and we're going to talk about one such scenario. So this is a simple picture of two-dimensional turbulence. I just want to tell you that this is the vorticity, like plus and minus shown in this. And if you take any of these vortices, 1, 2 here for example, they will have a Gaussian profile, and that is called a Lambosine vortex. So in 2D turbulence, vorticity is clubbed into, and vorticity is a curl of the velocity vector. It's clubbed into these patches which are typically Gaussian. And then we're now going to talk about an interface sitting on top of that. So our building block is just a vortex with a flat interface, a simple Lambosine vortex with a flat interface with density rho 1 and rho 2 on either side. So there's fluid 1 and fluid 2 there. That's our geometry. Now, we're going to talk about two mechanisms for creation of vorticity, creation of the curl of the velocity vector. So instead of writing the Navier-Stokes, we write it in the form of the vorticity equation, which is just curl of the Navier-Stokes equation, and this omega is the vorticity. So now, like you'll see that there are two mechanisms for vorticity creation. One is coming from the curl of the surface tension force, and the other is coming from, this also is coming from the misalignment between grad rho and grad p. So the pressure gradient and the density gradient. And when can this happen and when can this happen, we are going to see. And then there's the viscous term. So there are three non-dimensional parameters. The Weber number is the ratio of inertia by surface tension. Reynolds number everybody knows, and Atwood number I've talked about. So the inertia versus surface tension, the inertia is measured by a typical vortex radius and a vortex velocity. So then, like the Lambosine, in the limit of its thickness, size going to 0 becomes a point vortex. For a point vortex, when we start out from a linear interface, we know that it wraps up into this thing which we showed to be a Lituus spiral. So it is an Archimedean class of spiral which you can write down by hand, and it's ever tightening, so it keeps changing with time. And so inside the vortex something else happens which we will come to. So then, like when you have this kind of scenario, outside the vortex, there is this little spiral and baroclinic torque gets created. This is the vorticity creation that I talked about. So like when you have, in a fluid, heavy fluid sitting above light fluid, then becomes unstable. In this case, I've drawn light above heavy. And so like if I have a density gradient like this and this interfaces like this, it will tend to straighten out due to the creation of baroclinic torque just by this term. So the heavy versus light destabilizes the same thing. Now around a vortex, all the fluid is following circular paths, and because of that you get a pressure gradient, a radial pressure gradient in that direction. It's for centrifugal force. And suppose the density gradient, that means the interface of the two fluids, is misaligned with this, you're going to get a cross product, and that will create vorticity. So like this is the story behind this. Now, we talked about this dogma about surface tension. So, here I've written it in these terms. So, sigma is the surface tension coefficient, kappa is the local curvature. So, this is what the force looks like. It acts, the net force acts in that direction. As I said, it stabilizes high wave number, that is high k, but does nothing to small k. But vortices can distort these interfaces, and locally you can get this kind of term. And this can be a different kind of destabilizing term, and we'll talk about why. When this term gets created, what happens is vorticity gets created all along this interface. So this interface itself becomes a vortex, a thin sheet vortex in 3 dimensions and a line vortex in 2 dimensions. So whenever you have a vortex, you actually have a velocity jump from above to below. So here this vorticity creates a velocity jump from above to below. And we know that any interface where there's a velocity jump is by definition Kelvin-Helmholtz unstable. The Kelvin-Helmholtz instability is just this, and any velocity difference between up and down, it could be in a cloud, it could be anywhere, you start getting an instability. So like in a situation where if there was no surface tension, we'd have got no instability. This term is coming from, is proportional to the surface tension. If given that this F sigma is proportional to surface tension. If F sigma were 0, then you would not get this instability. So now you're getting this instability from surface tension. So that is what is going to happen in our case. And we now look at a simulation where we start with a flat interface. This is what the interface looks like at time equal to 0. And then we have a vortex sitting on it, a Lambosine vortex with this Gaussian decay of vorticity. And then like at time goes on, if there was no instability or small Atwood number, no surface tension, it rolls up like this. So except for this central part, the core part of this vortex, you will see that it's almost identical to a Litwus spiral, which we could write down by hand. So full simulation of the Navier-Stokes gives us this kind of interface. Now, we are going to study about the instability within the core where the shape is different and outside the core where the shape is a Litwus spiral. Within the core also we can write down how the shape of this is going to be, because we know the vorticity, we know the velocity at all time. So we can write down the shape and we can actually predict the instability. So like we do an analytical study where we neglect viscosity just to make it analytical. And then we do a simulation where we include viscosity as well. And Q is basically the R over RC, the whole square. So Q is a measure of the square of the radial distance starting from the center of the vortex. So we treat it in two separate places where Q is much, much less than 1, well inside the core, and Q much, much greater than 1, well outside the core where it's a Litwus spiral. So well inside the core, we can actually get an expression for the delta U, this velocity jump that I told you about, as a function of time. So as a function of time, it goes over some constant divided by Weber number. And Weber number has surface tension in the denominator, so delta U has surface tension in the numerator. So this is proportional to surface tension and to square of time. So this is something we've shown that it's proportional to the square of time, and that's how the velocity jump or the vorticity delta function on the sheet is created. Now, at very, very far away from the core, we can develop another expression, and here we again have a surface tension term which is proportional to t square, except there's a q square in the denominator. And then there is the Atwood number term, which is a density jump term. So you will notice from this thing that whenever this thing, and in a lithospheral spiral, it's not perfectly circular. So it's the difference between a spiral and a circle that's giving this instability. If the density jump is greater than 0, that's heavy inside light, it's equal to heavy above light because gravity acts in the radial direction. So then, like, you get an instability when heavy fluid sits inside light fluid. Now, in this case, we had heavy light, heavy light, heavy light. So every alternate interface is stabilizing and every other one is destabilizing. So black to white is always destabilizing, and we're going to see this other kind of instability which is driven entirely by density gradient, which is not Kelvin-Helmholtz, it's Rayleigh-Taylor. So this thing is a standard Rayleigh-Taylor instability, except it's due to centrifugal force. So we call it centrifugal Rayleigh-Taylor instability. So we have two instabilities going side by side. This one, it turns out, far away is weak because there's a q in the denominator and q is much, much greater than 1. But this one becomes powerful at far away. Although q is great, like as time progresses, it turns out that this one is the winner due to, various comparisons between these two terms. So now what happens is that this instability, as I told you, it can be stable or unstable depending on the sign. So this is important at larger distances. Now, let's go back and do this analysis for the stability analysis for the small distances. So well inside the core, you can get, a growth rate of instability. So this is actually the frequency of the disturbance. So we put a disturbance of wave number k around this thing and a frequency of this disturbance, and the imaginary part of this frequency gives the growth rate. So you will see that this is the expression. This is a textbook expression that we can write down when we are very well inside the core. You see that if I want omega I, the imaginary part, to be greater than 0, then I need this part to be negative. That's when I'll get an I when I take a square root. So I want this thing to be negative in order to get an instability. And you can see that this thing is positive and this thing is negative. So for instability to win, I need a large time. So when time goes above this quantity, which is just derived from here, you will see that there can be an instability. So here is a very strange situation where surface tension is doing the usual thing of stabilizing high K, and it's also doing this thing of destabilizing by creating vorticity. So we have surface tension fighting against itself, and in order to create an instability, it's winning against itself at long times. So this is our surface tension driven instability. So inside the core, what happens? So now we've derived the equation for this instability and we've shown that delta U goes as t square. Is that true in a full simulation? And here we compare the full simulation at 2 times in those symbols to this expression which goes up as t square. And you see that the full Navier-Stokes simulation is doing pretty well for one Lambosine vortex. The vorticity created is shown on this interface. And at late times, you can see this instability which has, happened because of that time greater than this that I told you about. So now, outside the core, similar things happen, but it's a much more complicated scenario. We can actually derive the whole thing there as well as we did long ago. In the intermediate region, both the mechanisms act. That means between the core and the far outside, you have both of these. So this is just an old simulation we had, which is very photogenic, of the centrifugal Rayleigh-Taylor and the spiral Kelvin-Helmholtz acting together. And these are present simulations which show that when surface tension is large, that means when Weber is small, this instability acts. And when you have density difference as well, you get this vortex very quickly committing harakiri. So like it's an instability which we don't know. So then like now we showed this thing in full two-dimensional turbulence, and since I've run out of time I won't describe it in detail, but you can see the vorticity generated. So the whole turbulence has become different. We started out with this flower shaped interface and this initial condition, and we can actually plot the energy spectrum for this, and we show that small scales are becoming very large in surface tension driven two-dimensional turbulence. So I'll put up the summary and stop this recording. Thank you for your attention.